saints in the light. He has rescued us from the power of darkness and transferred us into the kingdom of his beloved Son, in whom we have redemption, the forgiveness of sins. He is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him, all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or powers, all things have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together. He is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, so that he might come to have first place in everything. For in him all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, and through him God was pleased to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, by making peace through the blood of his cross. The word of the Lord. There's a man named Robert. Robert run a local hardware store since he was young. Everyone in town knew him. They knew him for his kindness. They knew that he was fair and that he had a habit of remembering the customers' names and even asking about their families. Yet something few people knew about Robert was that once he spent several months caring for a brother who had fallen into addiction. The brother had cycled through recovery efforts, each one ending in disappointment. One day following a relapse, Robert's brother had disappeared. For days, no one knew where he was. Robert closed the hardware store, gathered a group of friends, and they went searching for him. They finally found his brother in a motel, physically weak and emotionally spent. They took him to get help, helping him recover once more. And this time, he stuck with the program. And a year later, he was back in worship, sober, and very grateful. When Robert was asked what kept him going in those long months, what made him step away from his business, risk his reputation, and pour himself into the life of someone who seemed unable or unwilling to turn it around, he answered quietly, because he's my brother. And you don't quit on family. You stay with them until they become who they were meant to be. That story kind of wandered into my thoughts and prayers this week as I prepared. And looking at this section from Colossians, the Apostle Paul paints a sweeping portrait of Christ's identity and mission. Describe Christ as the one through whom all things were made and in whom all things hold together. Christ as the image of God, the head of the church, the one who reconciles everything in heaven and on earth. It is a vision that's like it's a tapestry. It holds threads of creation and redemption and God's purpose all woven together. Many churches around the world observe today as Christ the King Sunday. It's the final Sunday of the liturgical year. In some traditions, the theme centers around some kind of triumphant imagery with symbols and horns and with glory. But the passage from Colossians invites us to explore a deeper and perhaps more intimate meaning of Christ's kingship. What does it mean for Christ to be king? Not just over nations or people, but over the very fabric of creation. We might begin by noticing that the kingship described here is not a kingship of coercion or domination. It's not grounded in political power, military might, or by the ability to impose one's will. Instead, Christ's sovereignty is rooted in a relationship. Creation itself is presented as a work of love, sustained moment by moment by Christ's mere presence. The cosmos is not held together by accident, but by the one who refuses to quit on God's family. Christ is king because Christ is the life giver, the reconciler, the one who binds together what human beings often tear apart. In the Colossian church, there were competing claims about who held the ultimate authority. Some groups pointed towards some spiritual powers, others towards some philosophical systems, and others towards ritual practices. Paul responds with this amazing, astonishing proclamation that Christ is the beginning and the goal, the source and the destination, the one in whom everything finds cohesion. Christ is not merely a voice among many. Christ is the measure against which all other voices must be evaluated. The truth has implications. If Christ is king in this way, if Christ is the one who holds all things together, then our loyalties, our fears, our ambitions, and our identities all must find their proper orientation in him. We do not cling to Christ as an escape from the world, but rather to understand the world as it is, beloved, purposeful, and being drawn toward reconciliation. And reconciliation, it's not a soft concept. It's demanding because it requires real transformation. Paul speaks of patient endurance, of being strengthened by divine power, of being led from darkness into light. These are not passive experiences. They involve choosing forgiveness when resentment feels easier, seeking peace when conflict seems inevitable, and holding on to hope when despair looks more realistic. The story about Robert and his brother illustrates this. Christ the King does not govern from a distance. Christ comes looking for us when we are lost, carries us when we are too weak to stand, and stays with us long after everyone else has given up. Christ's authority is expressed through the kind of love that restores people to themselves and to one another. There's another aspect of Christ's kingship that deserves attention. Christ as the head of the church. This is not about hierarchy or status. It's about purpose. The church exists to embody Christ's mission of reconciliation. We're not simply a community of like-minded people who gather together for our own comfort. We are the body of the one who unites heaven and earth, who heals divisions, and who gives hope to those on the margins and dignity to those who have been forgotten. To follow that King means we actively participate in the ministry of making fractured relationships whole. Let me tell you another story. Years ago, there's a community in the Midwest found itself deeply divided over a controversial political issue. Tensions rose, neighbors stopped speaking to one another, and a group of high school students, some from churches, some from not, began hosting conversation dinners in the community. They met at the local community center. They invited anyone and everyone, regardless of where they stood on this issue, to sit at tables with a meal and with one simple rule: you must listen before you speak. The first time they did it, it was awkward. The second time, it was kind of tense. But by the fifth or sixth time, Something had changed in those people. A retired teacher found herself sharing cookies with a man whose opinions she had once dismissed outright. Small business owner apologized to a young man for a harsh remark that he had made to him. And eventually the community discovered that they could move towards solutions, not because everyone agreed, but because they recognized one another's humanity. No one would say those students were exercising any kind of kingly authority, but in their own way, they were living out the kind of reign described in Colossians. They were working toward reconciliation, refusing to let divisions define their life together. They were participating in the work of the one who holds all things together. If Christ is king, then the measure of our faith is not how loudly we proclaim our allegiance, but how deeply we reflect his character. Do we embody patience in a world of impatience? Do we seek understanding in a culture that rewards outrage? Do we affirm the worth of every person, knowing that Christ's reconciliation extends across any boundary that we draw? To confess that Christ is king is to say that love, not fear, not resentment, not power, is the governing principle of the universe. To trust that Christ is still at work in the world, even when that work seems to be hidden. It's to believe that no person is beyond redemption. No community is beyond healing. No situation is beyond hope. As we conclude this liturgical year, prepare for a new one, we return to this central affirmation. Christ is king. Not a ruler who demands a tribute, but a savior who gives himself for the life of the world. Not a monarch who rules from afar, but a shepherd who gathers us in, strengthens us for the journey, and invites us into the ongoing work of reconciliation. May we live under that gracious reign with courage, with patience, with unshakable hope. In the name of the Father,